Welcome to The World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
I'm Kirsty Bedford, journalist, editor and travel writer.
And I'm Belinda Jackson, author, travel journalist and columnist, and we're your weekly co-hosts. Welcome back to The World Awaits. How are you all?
Hi everyone.
Airbnb has unveiled the best towns you never heard of, which you are going to learn to love as they encourage more Aussies to holiday off the beaten track.
So its research found 40% of Aussies have never heard of these towns, not even one of the top tiny towns on the list. And I have to say, I haven't really heard of many of them either. And I'm using the excuse that I'm originally from New Zealand. So let's see how many of our avid traveller listeners know about these. So topping the list is Maclean in New South Wales, and 74% of Aussies admit to having never heard of the northern New South Wales town. God, 74% people hadn't even heard of that town. So what's so special about this little town, I hear you saying? Well, it is the self-proclaimed Scottish town of Australia, and it's hosted the Highland Gathering for more than 115 years. And there are also loads of green spaces, a beautiful golf course, and the hinterland to explore.
Look, I'm going to tell you, I have actually been to Maclean several times. It's near Yamba, just north of Grafton, if that helps put it into perspective. And it's a gorgeous little town. But second, third and fourth place were Scamander in Tassie, Monto in Queensland, and York in Western Australia. So Scamander is a popular tourist spot, apparently, even though they say that nobody knows about it. It's about 45 minutes drive from the Bay of Fires. So, and I'm sure that many people have heard about that gorgeous part of Tassie, although clearly 40% hadn't, but going by the research. Whereas Monto is inland from Bundaberg, and the town surrounded by farmland, it has a pretty historic main street to explore before you head out to Mount Walsh National Park. In the past, I had family living in Monto, so we used to go there all the time. I've got to say, when you're a kid, historic main streets don't really cut it. So I was like, oh my God, we're going to Monto. I just remember it being so hot in the Christmas holidays. We were always just foraging around looking for water, any water, to jump in for a swim. And if you're in York, you are there because it is the oldest inland town in Western Australia. So that's a great one for history buffs.
Next up, we have Mairie in Victoria, which is in the King Valley. And the research found that this was among the least recognisable towns, with only 5% of Aussies aware of it. Have you heard of that one, Belle?
It's all quite random. I think it's a crossroad up in the King Valley because I have haunted the King Valley fairly hard with a lot of love. But no, I didn't know. So, all right, go on, test us with another one.
Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this, and I'm going
Kiwi. That's okay.
I'm going with a Kiwi Aussie accent because can I just tell you a quick story before I pronounce this? That I hosted when I was working for Tourism New Zealand. I hosted a journalist once in New Zealand, just proving that Aussies are just as bad at pronunciation of New Zealand pronunciation as Kiwis are of Australian pronunciation. And I was hosting her in a place that she pronounced as Whangarei, and it was actually Whangarei. So there you go.
Okay, now you said that, go and pronounce this town in Tassie.
You can email us and correct us, please do. So there's a town in Tassie that is also on the list in the top 10, and that is Turana in Tassie, which has a strong convict history, and you can have close encounters with wildlife because it's where the Tasmanian devil Unzoo is. And you know why they call it an Unzoo? Because it's a conservation-minded wildlife park. Then there's also Bremer Bay in WA, which is surprisingly known for its pristine beaches because everywhere in WA has beautiful beaches. And no wonder no one's heard of these places because they're so bloody hard to pronounce.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, rounding out the top 10 are Lake Bennett. That's pretty easy in the Northern Territory. And you go there for its breathtaking waterfalls. Glen Alice in New South Wales, also very easy to pronounce. And that's surrounded by valleys.
And I gave you all the easy ones to pronounce, Al.
You did. Thank you. And it's also home to Capetri Valley, known as the world's second last canyon, and Tumby Bay in South Australia, dubbed as one of South Australia's most famous dive spots. And they've got some amazing dive spots there. You know, like if you're talking good diving in South Australia, phenomenal. Like all of those wildlife, the sea lions and the sharks and stuff like that, and giant cuttlefish, fabulous. So Tumby Bay.
And I picked up one further down the list, which is one of my favourite places. So I had to mention this. But further down the list at number 40 was Kilcunda in the Gippsland area of Victoria. And I know I'm saying that correctly, although unless it's my Kiwi pronunciation that you think I'm not. But
no. But everyone just calls it Killy, right?
I just love it there. And because from there, you can walk the George Bass Coastal Walk, which I do all the time. So we actually drive, because you can either walk it from San Remo to Kilcunda or Kilcunda to San Remo. But we like to go to Kilcunda because they have the best general store in the history of general stores, although it's closed at the moment for renos, but it's opening next month. So drive to stop at Kilcunda and then grab a amazing coffee, and they do a great chai latte there, and then you do your walk. And then if you don't go all the way, because otherwise if you go all the way to San Remo and back again, you'll be gone all day. So we just go like...
Or you do the 2 cars, one at each end, right?
Yeah, or we just go sort of a half, 3/4 of the way, turn around and come back. And then by that stage, it's time for lunch. And then you have lunch at Kilcunda General Store too. And then you drive home. But they do the best homemade, freshly baked muffins. And so I think that's just enough reason to visit.
Oh, it was closed when I was there last week. So I'm going to have to drive back to get a muffin hit. So you can check out the full list of tiny towns at airbnb.com/tinytowns, and we'll put the link in the show notes and you can see if you can pronounce them. You're listening to The World Awaits. Subscribe through our website at theworldawaits.au. This week, we're going to teach you how to hack rising flight prices. My guest is Mark Trim of Complex Travel Group, who has some really solid tips and advice on getting a better price for your flights to the US and Europe, and who doesn't love that? Mark, welcome to The World Awaits. We're so happy to have you here. Love a little AvGeek session.
Thanks for having me.
Now, just tell us briefly, how did you get into the travel industry? Because you started quite early, and what's your focus now with you have many arms to your business?
Yeah, I was doing this half my life, actually. I started in the travel industry. I was 20, just in a retail sort of environment, doing the training, that sort of thing. And, wanted to take over the world by the time I was 25, I think. And, quickly realized there was a bit of a corporate queue to get behind. So at 23, my wife and I, my now wife, started our own company, which was Roundabout Travel, specializing in round the world airfares. And we started that 2008, about 6 weeks before the GFC. So great time to quit your job and go out on your own.
Good time.
Which was, interesting experience. So I think we were working from home before it was popular to work from home, and built that up over a number of years, started, growing the company and growing the niche in round the world airfares and sort of more complex itineraries. And then from there, we added on a range of other brands as we got more repeat clients and interest. Oh, we did around the world last year. Would you do this? Would you do that? And as we did that, we sort of added on some extra specialties. So Flatbeds is one of our brands, which looks after business class travel. It's a long haul, value-based business class airfares. We added on a brand called Q Flyer, which manages travel for high tier Qantas frequent flyers. Looking to maximize status credits and a number of others. So we really play in that more complicated airfare space. I've always enjoyed that side of airfares. As a travel agent, it's the best way to sort of show off your skills, I guess, the more complex the itinerary is. So that was really where the name came from. Both our structure is complex in that we've got five soon to be 6 brands, and what we do is pretty complex. So we like to sort of play in the mud, I guess, in terms of airfares and the tricky parts of the industry.
So that means that you've really got an overview. Like you can look above and see the trends of where we're traveling. And I mean, the US and Europe are probably the biggest. So where are we actually all going? Where are we going?
Yeah, I think definitely for us, the big markets are the US and Europe. Europe's really the hero, I guess, out of Australia. For most of the industry. And I think the US is, sort of secondary to that, but obviously still a major focus. And then the rest sort of makes up the balance probably. In the round the world space, we find that 70% of our clients' main focus is Europe, and then North America is a nice to have. And it's probably the reverse. So those who are doing, both continents, probably 30% of their primary focus is North America. And that's still growing. I mean, there's a mix of travelers that, as the market matures, who still will obviously do maybe a 1 week in Thailand and they might do a 3 or 5 week trip in Europe or, per year. So they'll maybe have a flop and drop somewhere, Bali, like I say, Thailand, Vietnam, Fiji. That might be their sort of holiday. And then their actual traveling is typically Northern Hemisphere. Obviously, Japan's been growing a lot recently and other little hot spots. But I mean, Europe's always going to be there. And then where in Europe is another conversation, really. But, growth areas like Portugal, Croatia, Scandinavia, etc. But the core stuff like in UK, France, Italy, that's still very strong and a big part of the market, ex-Australia, I think.
And then the flying into into the US, the core destinations that we're gunning into, where are we going there?
Yeah, I think, you still see most of the airfares routed through a key hub and then people exploring, from there. I think the US has flattened a little bit, just to be honest with you, from the dollar and the higher price of airfares across the Pacific, but there's a little bit more sort of promotional activity to help sort of bolster that. So the US has probably flattened a little. I think a lot of the skiing market, for example, is a big market. A lot of skiers out of Australia. I think Colorado, Utah definitely suffering from Australians not going there and going to either Whistler or to Japan because the dollar's much better there. Yeah. So still some people going there, of course. New York's huge for Australians. I think in Times Square must be, 20% full of Aussies. So New York's always a strong one. Disneyland, Disney World for families, that sort of thing. The road trips and sure people getting out a bit more regionally is there. But it doesn't seem to have that growth that probably Europe, other parts of Europe is having. But yeah, US is still a big market.
So how much have airfares changed since COVID? They seem to be, I think I've just about got bill shock, built into my brain, but they still seem to be far in excess of what we paid just a couple of years ago. Is that really the case, or is that just what we're being told?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in effect, we have to remember the last time we booked airfares for COVID, whilst it was 2020, most of those bookings were made in 2019, right? So we're getting on 5 years ago. Yeah. Nothing in the world is ever cheaper or as it was 5 years ago. So I think it's understanding that, there's going to be a little bit of a soft landing on price, but I wouldn't expect things to go back to 2019 levels. It's just unrealistic. Airlines have had a lot of, the unions are pretty strong for, airports, airlines, pilots, etc. Globally. So there's extra wage costs, obviously operating costs, all of us, there's obviously cost of living prices, businesses have them as well. So I don't think we'll see them come down to that level, but they are sort of flattening or softening a little bit. In terms of changes, it's not just the amount of change, but the pace of change and in what areas. So the market is moving very quickly in terms of how complicated it's becoming. Airlines are changing their technology. The kinds of airfares are changing. They're being unbundled at an increasingly fast pace.
So wait, unbundled, you mean? Unbundled, you mean like buy the seat and then you add on things like meals, yes, movies, extra luggage, or fast tracking and all of that sort of thing.
Right, which is a way of, increasing their revenues. With airlines know that people shop on the main airfare, right? Like what you're saying, that's that bill shock. So how can they make up some of those revenue gaps through ancillaries? So that change in the industry is really interesting. And that's probably the big thing from post-COVID. Airlines don't want people to be able to do comparative shopping. They don't want you to just see it as a price on a website, one seat is equal.
So fares have gone up. You can't comparatively shop them, but we still feel like we're out of pocket. So how do we hack those fares? What tips have you got for getting a great airfare? Because look, I live on Google Flights, on Skyscanner. Show me a comparative shopping site for flights, and I'm like an animal at it. I'm like a dog at a bone, and you do tie yourself in knots for it. But how do we hack those fares? How do we get, what are some of the key tips when you're shopping for an airfare, either to Europe or the US?
The US is a little bit easier than Europe, I'll say that much.
Okay, right.
It's a bit more simple. However, a lot of that opportunity cost-wise at the moment will either be when the sales are coming out, so timing it correctly, because there is a lot of routine sale activity for North America. And outside of those periods, the fares are very high. So there's this huge discrepancy between sort of on sale and off sale. So wait, like people have got used to now playing the waiting game for the US because it's about every 5 to 10 weeks there'll be a sale on. That's largely Qantas being the price leader and others following. The other way to kind of, I don't like the word hack because I think it cheapens things. It's like hacking your weight loss is tricky. But that aside, that my personal pet peeve with hack aside, probably the other opportunities go through Asia. So if you're happy to trade a bit of your travel time up and maybe make that into an additional experience, so stopping in Tokyo, Seoul, sometimes Hong Kong, but Japan is probably the big one with both JAL, ANA, Korean Airlines, having better fares than the carriers going across the Pacific. So if you miss out on a sale and you're getting inside 3 to 4 months, you may not be able to wait for the next sale. So timing is important. In general, with the US, you can book on a little less lead time, but in Europe, certainly the lead time is very important, particularly if you're anywhere near school holidays and things like that.
So what sort of lead time are we going at? We talked about this last week. Kirsty, my co-host, books way in advance, and I am seat of the pants. Let's see where we can go next week kind of girl. So go on, school me in this. Yeah,
look, you can go both ways. I think if you leave it last minute, you sort of need to go where the airfares, what's left. If you prefer to have something planned more specifically, that's a very expensive strategy typically. The sweet spot for me is about 8 to 9 months out for Europe. You don't have to do it the full 10, 11. If you're off peak, you'll probably get away with 4 to 6 months. Inside 6 months I'm talking July, December, January, you just see prices going up and up. So effectively there's different strategies for northern winter and northern summer. So you'll get away with a much shorter lead time for the northern winter outside of our December, January holidays. But northern summer, I mean, the big trend in the last year or so is that September is becoming the new high season. It's wild. But the demand for September into early October, I've never seen it like this in the past. And I think that's on the back of heat waves and, fires in Greece and some of the things that happened last year. Couple that with the Olympics, people are looking to go, shoulder. We're yet to see that really apply to May. So May is one of my, if you wanted to hack it, I think May through to early June is a great time to go to get good weather. The European and the US crowds aren't there, and you'll get a good price from about September, October. So you can be booking that 7, 8 months out. But really that northern summer in Europe is one season or one booking season. So the right time to be booking May, June, July is typically the best time to be booking July, August, September. And that's why September has this huge lead time. It has like a 10 to 12 month lead, 10, 11 month lead time, whereas April, May, June probably has more like a 6 to 8 month lead time because they all come out at the same time. And so we still get a lot of demand for September, October from February, March of the same year. And we're like, people have been booking this for 4 months already. Prices are going up, seats are selling out, particularly in the premium cabins. So we will see the economy prices soften. Airlines do need help in the back of the plane, but so many more people want to travel in premium economy, business and first, as equities go up or depending on what stage of the life they're at, baby boomers and things like this. And they've got the discretionary income. So, the airlines are still being able to hold on to some of those high prices at the front of the plane.
Right. And I mean, timing is just one thing, but then there's also, as you mentioned just earlier about, having different routes, say, to the US going via Asia, because the hardest part I always find is just that flight getting out of Australia. Once you're out of Australia, it seems to be so much easier. I mean, we were talking before. I'm the mistress of the alternative route. So, I recently went to London via Brunei on Royal Brunei, which was really interesting. We've been seeing a lot of, going to the Middle East via Malaysia or Thailand even. Are there airlines that people just, putting aside the whole, I want to get there as fast as I can on the most direct route, which is the one that's going to be lightening your back pocket. Are there airlines that always are just sort of in your peripheral vision that you think, hey, let's take a look at those ones? Are there any little regional performers that you think that Australians have overlooked?
100%. And that is almost what we specialize in, really. I mean, you talked about Google Flights, Skyscanner. Yes, they're going to bring up the big players, but it's the niche boutique airlines that they don't have the same technology. And, as an agent, we can construct fares with these carriers. Yes, there's a few great ones. Our number one in the last couple of years has definitely been Oman Air, particularly in business class, just because the price difference is greater than in economy to the likes, Emirates and Qatar Airways and things. So Oman Air, fantastic quality airline, boutique carrier. They go through an Asian hub like Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, and Jakarta, even Manila. So yes, through sort of some interesting Asian ports, then through Muscat, which is a really interesting stopover, and then into about 5 or 6 ports in Europe. And we're moving over $10 million a year of that product. So quite a high volume for a small airline. Would be one of their bigger agents in Australia. And business class prices around high 5 to sort of 7K. So if you book with it some notice, you can get about $6,000 in business class, fully flat beds the whole way. Really good quality product. You can even use Qantas to Manila and Qantas to Bangkok. So you're getting that Qantas to Asia, which is really high quality. I mean, that's worth $4,000 just to Asia. You're getting that as part of a $6,000 airfare. So that's a great option. Finnair is a huge one for us. Great for Qantas frequent flyer point maximization and status credits. Again, an airline that flies under the radar, really good value, a little bit higher than they were pre-COVID, definitely, but still a great airline with a really interesting product in the front of the plane, but good in economy as well. And Turkish Airlines definitely coming up now, flying from Melbourne, but also servicing the rest of Australia with partner carriers. So through that Asian gateway system, again, we can create some really interesting itineraries with that, mixing and matching gateways and just stuff that doesn't come up online at price points that are much cheaper than some of the other airlines. So there definitely are a few of those carriers out there. And I guess that's where, as doing this professionally, where, yes, you can have a look online at home, that's fine, but what you will see versus what someone with actual system access and knowledge and how to put things together is, a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice to have somebody to bounce those ideas off. I mean, I've flown Oman a few times and used them as an alternative way to get up into the Middle East and onto Asia as well. Gorgeous airline and great airport too. Like really, since they renovated their airport, just beautiful. Like it's a really what I like about them is that they are not generic. They're very very much of their region. Now, I was really interested in your round the world ticket specialization. The last time I used one, I think I booked one on frequent flyer points and with Qantas, and I learned an awful lot. I did it myself. It was it did break my life a little bit, but there were a lot of rules about it too. You could only go in one direction. You couldn't backtrack and things like that. I don't know if that's the case, but if I've got, it's something that sort of, generally people have always thought round the world ticket, that's for a backpacker who's got loads of time and very little money. But if I'm doing a multi-stop trip, should I be thinking about them?
Absolutely. I think actually that's a huge misconception that it's just backpackers. So we were the only round the world airfare specialist in Australia. We move 50 million plus of these airfares every year. I would say less than 5% of the market is backpackers. It is actually people looking to get a better value ticket. At times they can be cheaper, but they're always a great value option. So understanding that, okay, maybe 10 or 20% more than a return ticket, but I get a whole extra continent in there. So instead of just going to Europe, I can go to Europe and North America and still include my Asian stop. So they are really a great value option. It's just a matter of have you got that extra week or two, to see something else. So we do a lot of these over school holidays. People that might have 6 weeks, or every European summer when they've got 6, 8, 10, 12 week holidays. They're not typically, yes, we do the 12-month gap years and probably more flash packing than backpacking. I don't think backpackers are actually onto these airfares. It's probably that slightly older, they're in that next stage of life where they've probably learned a few more lessons. I'm backpackers learn things the hard ways with airfares usually. They look something that's too cheap, they mess it up, they learn some lessons in life. So flashbacking maybe is a good market for us, but they're incredible. I mean, there's so much you can do with them. The thing is, they're the most complex ticket out there. There's rules. Like when I started the company, I got a tagline, was simply around the world, and we don't use it much now, but the whole point of it was we'll try to simplify that for the client. Like, let us take care of the rules and apply those in the best way and give you some options and things. So there's a lot of technicality, yes, but sometimes things like we can't backtrack are taken out of context. There's actually like a whole nother layer of what that means. So you can, but only in certain situations, and how much so some fares allow it, some don't. So it's not a black and white thing. Sometimes people book one ticket, like your experience is very common, and then they'll hold on to this notion of what applied in 2017 when I did this applies forever. They do this with airfares in general, right? They have this sticky expectations. Now, this is not how things work. So, but yes, you can get amazing. I mean, an economy around the world airfare for $2,500 to $3,500. You can see some great destinations on that. If you go to $4,000, you're going to get 5 stops, more inclusions, some more unique cities. So they're good value. Business class around the world airfares anywhere from $8,000 to say $11,000 for something basic through to something with more inclusions. And we do some really big ones covering heaps of ground for say $15,000. But nowadays, hey, return to New York can be 15K. So if you're getting 10 stops for $15,000, you can get a lot of value. But probably our most sort of common or sweet spot is 3 to 5 stops. And then people just use them as a base, and then they'll move around internally. So they might just fly into Rome out of Paris, into New York out of LA, and then organize train, car, etc. to get around. So they are our most popular, and they're definitely not backpacker actually. So, but they're amazing value and still in the market in a big way.
But it's away from coming from Australia into Asia and then Europe and around to the US and back to Australia. Is that the sort of
That's the most common. Yeah, you can do them with South America and Africa and things as well. I think the growth in certain airlines has moved some of that away to Africa, because now that the Middle Eastern carriers can get you there quite cheaply, we don't see a huge amount of that. Definitely the typical is, Asia, Europe, North America, or vice versa. You can go in either direction. I always think going west is best for jet lag and that sort of thing. But the 3 continents like that. It works great for Canada. There are certain markets where they're just cheaper to keep going, like Eastern Canada. If you're going to Toronto, you might as well do it around the world. In general, if you're doing that East Coast, Boston, etc., it's a good option just to kind of keep going. And it's really one extra day of travel. So I always think, Sydney, London, Sydney, New York, give or take, say it's 24 hours for each, right? Yeah. Well, so it's just that 1 8-hour flight across the Atlantic. So one extra day of your travel, and you've basically done around the world. So versus going back there, for families, we do a lot of it. If they just want to take the kids to Disneyland and they wanted to go to Europe, they'll combine it. And then we have a lot of people that have like family in one continent, but they really want to visit the other. So they're, my son lives in London, but we want to do we got into a Canada-Alaska cruise. They'll just combine them both into around the world. They're a great option.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, that's another one to look at. So now the final question, which we ask all our guests, and I'm really interested to hear this, is what is the most bizarre travel experience that you've had?
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
I know, and you've got to think about it too, haven't you?
I'm a bit of a travel princess.
Okay, that was unexpected.
I've been in the industry for a long time, and we travel a lot, like frequently, but not for a long duration. So I am not someone who goes to a lot of third world countries. There's not too many bizarre situations you can have at a Four Seasons or an Amman hotel or something. However, I'd probably say the most bizarre I had was probably Akureyri in Iceland. We were there last year, and I just spent so that's northern part of Iceland, and I just remember spending the whole day out the window, constantly saying to my wife, like, feels like we're on the moon, like we're in Mars or something. Like just the landscape, the volcanic impact on that land, and what you see, the bubbling mud pits and just sulfur and hot springs, but just this lava fields and things. It just felt, they film a lot of movies there, and Game of Thrones, etc. And just some of that landscape, it was bizarre. It just didn't feel like anywhere else I'd ever been. So that's probably the best one for me. Yeah, but an incredible part of the world, Iceland. Highly recommend it. We got pretty lucky with the weather, but nice part of the world in July.
Fantastic. Oh, that sounds like a great one. And I think, we should all be booking flights to Iceland at the moment. Mark, thanks so much for your time on the podcast. It's been great to tap into your knowledge and your experience. And we'll put some of the suggestions in the show notes, as well as the Complex Travel Group. So thanks again for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Those were such great tips from Mark. And if you want to learn more about his travel group, go to complextravelgroup.com.au.
Our tip this week is your go-to guide before you head off on an international getaway from Smart Traveller. So first up, subscribe to Smart Traveller because restrictions can change at the last minute and you want to make sure you're across anything that's happening in the place that you're going to be visiting.
Yeah. And secondly, check the expiry date of your passports. You might have heard my tale a while back about how my son, when he was a baby, was a day off for 6 months and we couldn't go on a trip to Singapore. Such a nightmare. So, so just make sure, obviously, that everyone has at least 6 months on their passports.
And, of course, smarttraveller.com.au says, get travel insurance. The saying goes, if you can't afford insurance, you can't afford to travel. And if the tragic accidents we see people having overseas and having to start GoFundMe pages is anything to go by, it's just not worth the risk. I mean, I remember, Kirsty, there was a story when I first started travelling about a woman in the US. She had climbed over a barrier to get closer to polar bears because clearly she didn't have a zoom lens and she was taking a photo of them. Well, a polar bear jumped on her and it punctured her buttocks. So she had these big holes in her backside. And so she spent the next
barrier to go on with polar bears. Sorry, but
it was really cute and all of that sort of thing. I think she was a dental nurse from Sydney or something. But
and she jumped. Anyway.
Well, her parents ended up mortgaging their house to pay for her medical bills because it was the US, and she had to spend all this time lying flat on her face in a hospital. So anyway, right,
like horrific and
it is awful. And from then, I am. You might think I'm disorganized, but I always have travel insurance. So what else does Smart Traveller say?
I do not think you're disorganized. What makes you think that?
Last week's conversation about when I book my international flights, which is like 10 seconds before I go to gate. But what else does Smart Traveller? I'm doing myself a disservice here. Tell me what Smart Traveller tells me.
That's if you make the flight. All right. No, that's never happened. We won't even go there. All right. Where are we up to? Yes, I agree. It's not worth the risk. And I do also always get travel insurance as well. And also ask about vaccinations and make sure they're up to date. Vaccinations can be super expensive though. And sometimes you don't, if you go to the doctor, we've got a special vaccination travel doctor at our doctor's surgery. And I'm sure sometimes I wonder if they just kind of make that title up just so that they can charge us like ridiculous amounts of money for every vaccine under the sun. But yeah, look, we did go and take the kids when they were little and we were going to Vietnam to make sure we were updated, and it's always worthwhile because it's one of those things again, isn't it? Like anything else, you don't want to end up getting something happening and you aren't vaccinated. And so, yeah. What about you, Belle? You had a vaccination story, didn't you?
I remember actually I was going to Kenya, and at the time it needed a yellow fever vaccination. And this is important to check these things because it does change. So they were adamant that you needed yellow fever. I was living in Cairo at the time and had to run around everywhere trying to get the vaccination and the piece of paper. And when I finally got it, they didn't even look at it. But I think Central Asia also required vaccinations too, which have taken a bit of a toll. I don't have a specialist at my doctor's surgery, so I had to ring around about 4 places to try to get the vaccination. So it can take time. They might have to order the vaccination in. So that is not a last minute thing as well. And also sometimes you need the vaccination to actually have taken effect before you come in. You can't just get it one day and then turn up the next sort of thing. So Planning ahead on that one is something that I've done.
Yeah, that's good advice about it taking time to take effect. And make sure you have the right visa and research any application fees you might need to pay, like the new $11.50 fee you need when travelling to Europe next year, which is a new entry requirement. I mean, it's not so much just about the $11.50, right? It's about the fact that you actually have to have it.
Yeah, interesting. And this is one that I always do. Make copies of your passport, visa and insurance policy. Leave one at home and take one with you, because you never know when you're going to, when you might need them if yours are stolen or lost. And I always take I take photos of them and chuck them in a Dropbox as well, which I have on my phone, which I can also access on any computer as well.
And this goes without saying, but make sure you obey the laws of the country you're in and do some research, and don't do what I did and video call Belle on WhatsApp while she's sitting at a luxury resort. And
oh, it's not that it's illegal; it's just not possible because, there are restrictions on VoIP and different things such as WhatsApp that you can't. You think you're ringing. You thought you were ringing, but I just kept hanging up on you. But it's actually that call will never go through. And let people know where you are at all times, they say. And I don't take unnecessary risks. If I could only talk to that 20-something-year-old Belle, I'd probably be a lot more boring person. I don't know. Let people know where you are at all times. I don't mind hiding a bit every now and then, going off kilter, but you'll always find me on Instagram. Global_salsa.
Next week, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Belle takes us down the coastline of Vietnam, so make sure you stay tuned for that one.
And we'd love it if you could give us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Click on our profile, scroll down to the bottom to ratings and reviews, and hit the number of stars that you'd like to give us. 5 is a nice number. And if you're on Spotify, go to our main page, click the 3 dots underneath our photo. We'd love to hear from you, or drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au. That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods. And where can people find you, Kirsty?
I'm at Kirsty Wrights on Instagram. That's Kirstie Wrights, WRITES. And where can people find you, Belle?
You can find me at globalsalsa.com or on Insta at global_salsa.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.